This show is brought to you by the Garden Gurus and Evergreen Garden Care. Evergreen Garden Care and their market-leading brands are some of the most trusted consumer brands within the garden care market. They produce high-quality garden care products designed to help people create their own green oasis. Whether it's a garden, a balcony, or potted indoor plants, they want to inspire anyone, anywhere to be able to easily create and maintain their own garden. To find out more about Evergreen Garden Care, head to www.lovethegarden.com. Garden Express are Australia's leading mail-order gardening service, offering a wide range of quality garden products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show you jump online and visit their website.
Sorry, I'm going to try that again. Hello, I'm Trevor Cochrane. Welcome to the Garden Gurus Live. It's great to be back with you. Now, of course, it's actually a Tuesday morning. Normally we would be on a Monday, but over here in Western Australia, it was a public holiday. And I hope you don't mind, but my gang and I took the weekend off and we all spent a bit of time in the garden because the weather was actually pretty good over here. But it's not going to be like that all over Australia. In fact, on the East Coast, for those of you over there, you will have noticed that there's some pretty cool weather coming your way. So we'll share some tips with you a bit later on today with regards to how to keep your garden looking great. In fact, my mate David from Garden Express, he has got an offer which will help you enormously as we move into winter. And it's all about keeping your plants protected, particularly those new ones that are starting out. Today is all about answering your gardening questions. We don't have too many interviews. We've got a lot of great tips. And I do have a plant of the week, which I'll be featuring a bit later on. And of course, we always do this. Thanks to our friends at Fothergills, we always give away a heap of packet seeds. And you can see them there. So our top 5 questions, Michaela will be, because Michaela's producing today and Stephen's driving on the other side of it with all the technical side. But Michaela will be selecting the 5 best questions. And to get started, I thought we'll start off with a few really good ones. Now, Terry, and I should mention before we dive into that question, this is a really good point. Please tell us where you're from. So, Terry, I don't know where you're from, and it can vary sometimes by location as to the kind of problems you might be experiencing. But in this particular instance, it's one that's fairly universal if you've done what Terry's done. Terry's planted some sugar snap peas. So these are not sugar snaps, these are peas, but now is the time to be getting these into your garden. Best way to grow them is from seed. She's done that. She's planted them and then transplanted them into a mixture of potting mix and sheep poo. And she's got no idea why, but they didn't like the environment. In fact, they shriveled up soon after. And a lot of it's probably got to do with the sheep poo. So you're a lot better just to plant your seeds into the growing mixture. And often with manures, whether it be sheep, cow, horse, or whatever, they can have a little bit of nitrogen in there. And when you've moved little delicate roots across, if there's any damage done to them, that nitrogen will burn them and it'll cause them to shrivel, which is exactly what I believe has happened with your sugar snap peas. So my recommendation is that you just sow straight into the ground where those plants are going to grow. They don't handle any kind of root damage super well at all. And just a little thing on peas. Peas and beans are really, really good. They're legumes, and legumes do a couple of things. One is that if you rotate them across all of your garden beds, you'll end up with a nice balance of nutrients. They tend to only use certain nutrients. And one of the things they do is they take nitrogen out of the atmosphere and they lock it up in the soil. Now, this is really important because it means that other plants can actually absorb that nitrogen as they need it. So effectively, it means you don't have to apply nitrogen. This is Mother Nature at her very best. There are plants that have adapted, this group, this family of plants called legumes, and they're very, very good at taking nitrogen from the atmosphere and putting into the soil to allow your plants to take it up. I hope that helps, Terry. Now, good news is Glenys has just written in, and she is from Townsville in Queensland. Thanks, Glenys. Now, she sent a couple of photographs, and these photographs show a broadleaf weed moving through the lawn, and she's basically said it's all over her backyard. You can see those photographs up there. What can I use to kill it? And then what would I need to get the grass growing again? Well, I'm going to give you the one-stop solution, and it comes from the guys at Evergreen. It's the Love the Garden team. They have got Lawn Builder, Lawn Grub, and Insect Control. Now, this is a really very, very good way to get control of over 16 different broadleaf weeds. It's unbelievable how effective it is, and it really does a really good job on such a wide range of them. So if you're applying this now, you are going to clean up the lawn, and it takes out things like bindi, flatweed, dandelion, any of those that are moving through at the moment. It will get control of them. But you've really got the next 2 to 3 weeks to get on top of this, because once those weeds start going to seed, you're in real trouble. So the solution is Lawn Builder Weed Killer. It's a granulated one. You apply it over the surface of the soil. Follow the instructions, but it's a terrific way of getting control of these pests. Now, Karina is our next question. Narrowcoot in South Australia. It's got a passion fruit vine that died, and you're thinking that it was Fusarium wilt, which is a type of fungus. And I wanted to plant another one, but I'm thinking maybe I should dig out the old soil, or is there something you can put in the soil? If you've got Fusarium wilt, I wouldn't be replanting in that soil, that particular location. It is unusual for passion fruit to die, and there are some rootstocks, and you're in South Australia, it can get pretty cold during the winter months, that do better than others, and that is what you should be looking for. I suspect the one you put in as a seedling, if you put in something that's been grafted, one of the Nelly Kelly passion fruit varieties, far more likely to be able to grow without being affected by Fusarium wilt, which is a fairly common soil-borne fungus. So some rootstocks will provide you that protection. That's what I'd suggest you look out for. And if you want to get your hands on Nelly Kelly passion fruit, well, probably one of the best ways to do it is, of course, go straight to Garden Express, because they will deliver it direct to your door. And there's a whole bunch of different varieties. So you might end up with 2 or 3 different varieties as well if you check out their website. Derek, you didn't tell us where you're from, but you've run out of ideas to control armyworm. And again, this is where that Lawn Builder range is so good. So Lawn Builder is a fertilizer. And to add back to my previous comment about Lawn Builder with regards to weed kill, it also has that slow release fertilizer in there, of course. So once the weeds are dead, the lawn that's existing has been stimulated and will grow through. Weed kill really should only be used on fine leaf lawns, and that certainly was. But when it comes to Lawn Builder and controlling insects, there is actually a Lawn Builder, Lawn Grub, and Insect Control, plus that slow release fertilizer. So again, this is a great way, Derek, to take the lawn armyworm out and get control of all of those grubs. And it does African black beetle, it does a whole range of them. Really good way to get control. Now, I hope that solves your problem, because it really can be quite a significant issue for us. This time of the year, it seems like lawn armyworm is everywhere, right across the country, and it's been causing all sorts of issues. So I'm hoping that will really help. Okay, so I hope I'm answering your questions and you're enjoying this, but I will just say to you, please, if you do like what we're saying, what we're talking about, what the questions I'm answering for you, or some of the things that we do through the show, please give us a like. Let us know that you're watching. It's really important. Really, really do appreciate your support too. Now, Adrian is in Perth, so our first caller from Perth today. Adrian would like to know, can you grow Lily of the Valley in Perth? Absolutely, you definitely can. And if you want to know where to get your hands on it again, best way is to go straight to Garden Express, because they sell Lily of the Valley at certain times of the year. So check out the website and get your order in as quickly as you can. It grows really, really well in WA, particularly if you're up in the hills or if you've got a shaded spot in the garden. Now, Jenny is from Rye in Melbourne. I'm going to belt through these questions. Lovely to see you this morning, Jenny. I hope lockdown isn't affecting you too badly, but it does seem to get us all out into the garden, which is nice. And your question is, you are still on the bandwagon of citrus. Mum would like to know why her lemon leaves keep getting a bubbling effect. Now, this bubbling effect that we're talking about is caused by a little moth, actually. The moth flies in just on dusk and it lays its eggs in the epidermal layer, so just under the skin of the leaf, of new soft tissue, so the new emerging leaves on your citrus trees. Now, it's called citrus leaf miner. It is a really significant pest of citrus in Australia, and it can leave your trees looking all gnarled, and mum will be pretty upset about that effect. Good news is that you can control it simply by spraying one of those horticultural oils, so eco oil, white oil, any of those, just on dusk. And what you should do is only spray when you see new foliage coming through, and you'll break the breeding cycle of the citrus leaf miner moth, because it doesn't like landing on that oily substance. It won't lay its eggs there, and as such, your new leaves will develop. The trick with it is to apply it once a week for probably 3 weeks. I hope that helps. Now we're back in Perth. Hello, Kim. Hi, team. This has happened to my lily pilly hedge last week. It's dying on the lower branches. Looks like it's spreading upwards. How can I fix it? This actually looks to me more like it's a splash of something that has made that lily pilly hedge unhappy at the base, because it's not universal right across the base of the plant. It's not moving evenly up through the plant. It's only in one little patch. Now, what I would recommend you do in this particular instance is take some samples down to your local garden centre. Now, I'm not sure what suburb you're in, but probably your local Waldex is a good one to stick your head into. Show it to them. I think that this is something that has come across the plant that it didn't like. If it is fungus, and it'd be very unusual for lily pillies to be affected this way with a fungal disease, then they're going to recommend one of those fungal treatments. But looking at the picture again, I suspect it's not. I think something has touched that tree or those leaves and caused a burn. So I don't know whether you've been using herbicide or something, but yeah, there's something not quite right there. I hope that helps a little bit. Local garden centre, drop in and see them. Scott Ross is from Ipswich in Queensland. Hello, mate. You want to know the best time to repot a Zanzibar gem. Now, Zanzibar gem is that wonderful indoor plant that's almost indestructible. They really are fabulous plants. The trick with them, though, is not to damage the roots during the peak of the cold of winter. So probably September would be when I would look at repotting a plant up. And it's going to sit happily until then anyway. So I wouldn't worry about repotting just at the moment. Remember, when you do repot, you want a really good indoor potting mix. And the reason why you go for an indoor potting mix is the one like the ones from Scott's, for example, the Osmocote potting mix. It uses cocoa peat in it. It doesn't use bark. Now, why is that important? That's because one of the single biggest problems that we're currently seeing out there at the moment is fungus gnats, these little flies that suddenly emerge in around your indoor plants, and that's because you're using potting mix that's got bark that hasn't been using cocoa peat predominantly in its mixture. So look for the right potting mix when you do it, Scott, but I'd leave it until September anyway. Kanga Blues come into us from YouTube, and should mention we're broadcasting live through Love the Garden, through our YouTube channel, and of course on Facebook. Now, Kanga Blue is in Newcastle, New South Wales. You've got container citrus, mandarin, orange, and lemons. It's often recommended to use cow, sheep manure on citrus, but is it too strong for container citrus? Absolutely. Do not use manures in plants that are in pots. Really important, because if that manure hasn't been composted right down and the nutrient level isn't reduced dramatically, you can cause significant burn. I would recommend that you don't go using any of those manures. I would suggest a controlled release fertilizer like Osmocote for citrus. That way you're guaranteed to really get the best possible results. Not a bad time of the year to actually give them a bit of a prune too. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now, this particular guy is the man around town when it comes to Melbourne. Not like you can get around town just at the moment, because his social life's been held back just a bit. The local wineries are all probably down in their purchases at present because David Van Berkel's spending all his time on the farm. Mate, sorry for giving you a hard time. How are you going?
Yeah, not too bad, Trevor. Actually, just come back to this cold lockdown environment from a lovely week in the Northern Territory. So sorry to dispel your little spiel there, but I had a ball in the sun.
Yeah, well, we had Rowan on last week, and he did tell us that you're in the Northern Territory. What was your highlight whilst you're up there?
The whole place, like we were meant to go on the Garn, and they kicked all the Victorians off, and so we just did a tour through Litchfield National Park's just delicious.
Yep.
Ayers Rock, of course, is just a behemoth of rock there, but I love Kings Canyon, mate. Kings Canyon's just to die for up there.
Okay, all right. They're all highlights that I'm going to keep my eye out for, because obviously we're all travelling within Australia these days anyway, so it's a chance for us to explore our own home and really get to see some of these things. You forget about just how beautiful the north of Australia is too sometimes.
Yeah. Look, and I bumped into, we had a French backpacker work for us for about 5 months last year. He decided to ride solo from Port Augusta to Darwin, and we bumped into him on the Ayers Rock Road about 2 k's in, just absolutely randomly. And
Wow.
yeah, incredible. So we're going to try and get him sorted to raise some money for the Royal Flying Doctor Service in the next couple of days for the rest of his trip. So
Well
pretty
done,
exciting.
mate. That's fantastic. Well, sounds like it was lovely. But you're back, and guess what's happened? Victoria's got a traditional winter on. Things are pretty cool and wet there. And now we're about to get a blast from the Antarctic. How do we protect our plants when you've got that sort of extreme weather?
I think the blast is already here, judging by this morning, Trevor. It's just absolutely freezing, and the rain is just super cold at the moment. But obviously, you can grow a lot of things under a bit of plastic. We've got these tunnels, a cloche tunnel for a bit of warmth, and a plastic tunnel as well. They're 3 meters long and about 600 wide, and they come concertinaed so that you can stretch them out. There's the drawstring there to pull it nice and tight, and that was the shade version just on the Vision there.
Yep. And now we've got the white fleece cloth going down. This is what I use at home, mate. So what I find is I'm about 2 or 3 degrees cooler than the sand plains here in Perth, where I am up in the hills, and it's enough to stop things growing. But by putting in these protectors, and for me, it's the fleece and the poly that are the 2 most important ones now. Because, look, let's face it, all professional growers, they've got all their plants at the moment in polytunnels, haven't they? They're using the warmth, the solar warmth, to keep their plants growing.
Absolutely. It's polytunnels, glass, even the shade now. I find that good outdoor growers are starting to use a light amount of shade to keep really good colour in their plants. So from a commercial aspect, it's essential that we have these things. But for our home gardeners, of course, you need something that's portable, compact, to change with the seasons. And I love that footage there of the different styles that we have for you, Trevor.
Yeah, well, look, it's a good example. We did the story with this last year, and everybody picked up on it. And the reason is that for home gardeners, this kind of product just isn't available. It's not commercially available out there in retailers or anything else. You can only get it from you guys at Garden Express. So now's the time to be picking it up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now's the perfect time, and we've got a discount on at the moment for the viewers, Trevor, 20% off. So down to $23.90 from $30.
Gee, that's a great deal. Now, with this, people will place their order. When they're online, there's a whole bunch of other things to look at. They can put this into their obviously pick up on this special deal, but put this into their basket and pick up a few other plants to maybe go into the garden just at the moment as well, right?
Of course, make the most of the one delivery cost. It's a standard cost for all items until you get up to some of the really bigger things. So yeah, for sure, we'll ship this out with your strawberry plants, your lily of the valley that you talked about, passion fruits, and of course, it's a great time for produce. And at the moment, I had some fresh lettuce from under one of our polytunnels in our home garden, Trevor, last night.
Yeah, you see, this is what you can do, is you can grow things really not quite out of season, but certainly get better results of them in season. And that means that your produce is coming through, and there's nothing quite tasty as homegrown produce, is there?
Absolutely. And my passion fruits are falling off 10 to the dozen. So yeah, it's a great time in the garden, even though it is so cold. Keep your plants a little bit warm, and you'll get a little bit more from them.
All right. So, mate, if people want to get their hands on this, one of the big issues that we've had has been some of these offers are so popular, everything sells out pretty quick. So people need to jump online pretty quickly and order. How do they do it?
www.gardenexpress.com.au. And if you look for the Gardener's Advantage range, the tunnels, the cloth, the mesh, and the polytunnels are all available on the store there.
That's brilliant, mate. Look, thanks so much. I appreciate the fact you've come out of the cold, out of the heat and into the cold to be able to spend a bit of time with us, David. It's always good catching up with you, mate. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm here for good. It looks like at the moment, but no, a really busy season ahead of us with all of the farm harvests. I was out there again this morning. We're starting to get into some really juicy product to bring to our customers over the next few weeks.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you about spring and what's coming up, what people should be getting in now so they can benefit from spring flower and colour and food in the next couple of weeks. Thanks so much for joining us today, mate. Have a great day. Stay warm.
My pleasure. Cheers, Trevor.
All right. That's great. It's good to catch up with David. He's such a great bloke. And they do such a good job. Of course, they're getting this stuff delivered direct to your doorstep. You don't have to go anywhere. It's all there for you. And I love it. I love the convenience, particularly for those of us that, we can't get around at the moment because we're stuck either with a lockdown or alternatively, we're keeping a lower profile and staying at home. This is a terrific way to shop and get your favourite garden plants delivered. Now, I'm going to move into some more of your questions and answers. You're sending them through absolutely flat out. It is fabulous, and I really appreciate it. Just on Garden Express, Margaret sent us a note. Hi, Trevor. Thanks for the capsicum seeds you sent me. Just what I needed. You are very welcome. Well done, Margaret. But she's also mentioned that she received 12 roses from Garden Express yesterday. So excited to get planting. Might have to wait until tomorrow, though, as the Upper York Peninsula is getting pounded wind-wise. Well, that's actually a really good point, Margaret. Don't go planting out your deciduous plants or anything when it's too windy. Try and give your plants a bit of protection from that sort of extreme. Your roses are exactly the same, even though they might be dormant, and now is the time to be getting dormant roses in. And as you've pointed out, Garden Express have got some fabulous ones. Try and keep them protected. Get them in on a day where there's a little bit of sunshine out there, just a little bit of warmth. It'll do them the world of good. And make sure that you give them one of those little tree planting tablets when you get them off to the beginning of their start. Water in with a bit of sea salt, and they'll do incredibly well. Okay, where should we go? Let's go to Victoria. We've obviously just come from Victoria with David. We've got another David. David's in Melbourne. What fertilizer to use that's not attractive to dogs? Now, it's a really good point. Dogs generally attracted, for some strange reason, to those really smelly chicken manure-based pellets. So it doesn't do anything for their breath at all, and certainly not good for the garden. And generally, it doesn't seem to hurt them, but it is those manure-based fertilizers, and it seems to be chicken. So I've more than once got a lick on the face from Buddy or Charlie after they've had a bit of a munch on some dynamic lifter, and it's not an enjoyable thing. So I would avoid that, is my advice. Aaron's in the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria. Hello, Aaron. It's great to have you join us. What can I do to help my gum tree on the nature strip in Mornington, Vic? It's about a quarter of the sizes of all the other trees in the street. This might be the answer, but the previous owner did raise a mound around a foot high and wide around the base. What can I do to help it? Well, it probably is just simply a case of it getting its roots down. And if the owner has planted it into a mound, generally you would do that. And this is some of the gardening lessons I can share with you. You generally only do that if you've got poor drainage. So if you've got a heavy loam or a clay soil, you might mound up and then plant it at the top of the mound. Now, this stops the roots sitting in and getting waterlogged in heavy soils. Really good way to go as far as those people with heavy soils. But if you're in sandy soils, and Mornington Peninsula, if you're on the peninsula itself, has really sandy soils, as sandy as Perth will ever see as well. That's when you actually plant into bowls. So you actually do it the reverse way. Now, the reason for that is moisture moves downwards. So if there's rainfall, if there's water flowing through it all, it'll move towards the plant and towards the roots, and then it soaks down like that. And what that does is encourages roots to go down deep. I don't know there's an awful lot you can do just at the moment. Gums will be growing just at the moment. All you really want this tree to do is to get its roots down a little bit deeper. One of the things that you might want to consider banging a couple of holes into the ground and putting some of those tree planting tablets down, maybe 60 to 90 centimetres maximum depth into the soil, probably 60 is ideal, and that'll encourage roots to grow down a little bit further towards the nutrient. That should help a little bit. Melissa is in Bundaberg in Queensland. Hello, Melissa. You've got 3 grevilleas. Now, you've said they're trees and they look half dead. There is new growth, but the older growth is what looks dead. What can I do to help them along and stop them looking so dead? You've trimmed new fringed wattle tree tips. Any tips and ideas, please? Yes. Okay. Well, look, right at the moment, these plants should be growing. So if you're using a native plant fertilizer, and again, I'd probably use something that's a little bit on the softer side and certainly environmentally friendly, like Osmocote for natives, that's going to help. With grevilleas, particularly some of those big leafy tropical varieties, they can get some fungal infections, and airflow through them is a really important thing. So going through and trimming off definitely the dead foliage is going to help them a lot, and maybe shaping the plants up and encouraging some growth from down low is also a good idea. So feeding, light pruning, that's my recommendation, Melissa. Now, our next person is Joanne, and we're not sure where you're from, Joanne. You've just planted some new roses and something's eaten all the new growth of the leaves. Would it be possums? And how can I make sure they don't die? Right. It's a good question, Joanne. It depends where you are. If you're in a warmer climate, it's highly likely that you've got a grub doing that damage. Look, it's possible possums could be doing it. They would eat all of the growth off, though. They would eat the whole lot. If it's just leaves and you're seeing holes in them, I'm suspecting it's caterpillars. And if it's caterpillars, you want to be using, well, probably one of the general insecticides. Now, you could use a pyrethrum-based spray if you want to try and do it as naturally as you possibly can, or bifenthrin. There's a couple of sprays that come in your local garden centre that's got bifenthrin in them and will take out those grubs. As far as possums go, the only thing you can really do is to put up solid barriers over the top and try and protect them. I hope that helps. Nicole is in Melbourne. We're getting lots of messages in from Melbourne. It's fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, Nicole, is it true that we need a female and male avocado tree to get the fruit? I'm from Mauritius. I've never heard of this. And Nicole, it is, well, it's going to be answered in a minute because it's actually my feature plant of the week. And I want to show you some of these plants and explain how to get the best results from avocado. So just stay tuned with me. I'll answer this for you in a second. Karina, what about growing passion fruit in a pot in Naracoorte in South Australia? I want to hide my water tank. Passion fruit do grow really well actually in big large tubs, half wine barrels, fantastic, and you will get great crops from them. It sort of contains the plant a little bit, so they're never quite as big as a passion fruit would be, but this would be a great way to actually grow them. The other thing you could do is actually plant them into the ground, and as long as your soil's half reasonable, you'll find you'll get a good result. And again, if you've got a heavy soil, I'm not sure about Naracoorte, I'm not 100% sure what the soil's like, but if it's a harder, heavier clay kind of soil, and you do have those in places over there, you might use that mounding technique that we just talked about there. So to answer the questions about avocados, let me show you these. I went and did a little morning harvest this morning. These are fresh avocados straight off my avocado tree, and I wanted to show you that's a tree. You can see how lush and healthy and dark green that foliage is. We would have got, I would say there's probably at least 250 avocados on one tree. I've got 4 trees now in the garden because we can never get enough of them. We do all sorts of things with our avocados, and the trick with them, of course, is to pick them, and you don't eat them when they're hard. You let them sit for 4 to 5 days, and then when they're soft to touch, like it would be pushing your nose, that's when they're ready to eat. So that's the little trick. So my recommendations with avocado trees, and we'll go back to the male-female for a start, is if you are in a major town or city in Australia, there are so many avocado trees out there now, you don't have to worry about planting 2 different types. They usually would recommend planting 2 different types for the cross-pollination of the flowers. It's not so much male and female flowers because trees generally have male and female flowers on the same tree. It's just they open at different times of the day. So the other interesting thing about avocados is that avocado flowers tend to be pollinated by flies, not necessarily by bees. And you will get other pollinators move through, but it seems to be flies that do the majority. The one other thing that you do need to be aware of is that they tend to be biennial croppers. So this particular tree, which has got a great crop on this year, next year I expect it'll only have maybe 50 fruit on that particular tree. But one of my other trees, which has only got 50 fruit on or so this year, and it's more the alligator pear type, so it's one called Furete, that particular tree next year I'd expect will have 300 or 400 fruit on it. So one of the other things, I got asked a question just this week actually about whether you could grow avocados from seed. And if you want them to grow true to type, you're best to get grafted plants. So if you want to have, a Hass or Sharwell or one of those specific varieties, then you literally go and get yourself a grafted tree, and that name variety will be exactly what you get. But if you grow it from a seed, you could get variation. That is because the cross-pollination came between two different varieties. So you might get a cross between one or the other, so a slightly different fruit. As a general comment, that fruit is always good. It's always pretty good. But there is a risk that you might end up with one that's unpalatable. So it's up to you. And the one other thing to remember with growing avocados from seed is you could take anywhere between 5 and 7 years before you start getting crops. But once you get those crops, you'll end up with lots and lots of them. I don't know what else I can tell you. Two more tips. One is that you should always put them in a protected place so they don't like getting blasted by wind as a smaller tree. And the trick with avocados is you have to try and protect them in the first couple of years to let them get a good root system down. The root system is generally not very strong until the tree has really started to mature. So let them get their root system down. They start trying to produce fruit. Pick off the fruit. Don't let the tree try and produce the fruit. Let it put all the energy into a root system and new foliage and structure. And then year 3 or ideally year 4, you can start to look forward to really good crops starting to come through. My trees are now probably year 7. And one tree would be at least 7 meters tall with a spread of about 4.5 meters. And it's absolutely fabulous. It's producing great crops. The other one wouldn't be far off. And then I've got 2 smaller ones, which are different varieties. And the reason why I've got the different varieties is not for cross-pollination purposes, but it's to expand the season out. So what you'll see is all the fruit come through, and you've probably got with avocados 6 to 8 weeks as the fruit starts to mature. Generally, you'll know that fruit are ready to start picking when you see the first one fall off, but you can pick them green. But what I'm trying to do by having 4 different varieties is expand that fruiting season to be over a 4-month period. So for a good 16 to 20 weeks of the year, we're picking fresh avocados, which is fantastic in my household. All right, I hope that helps you with avocados. They are a great tree to grow. They are, of course, an evergreen, and they've got beautiful, dense canopies of foliage that looks like that. And when you see foliage like that, it's just glorious. So, and you can grow them in most places in Australia, with probably the exception being the absolute top end of the tropical spectrum. They do like cooler conditions, so they'll grow quite well down south. Okay, moving right along. Where shall we go? Okay, Never Lost for Words has come through to us from our YouTube channel. Thanks for telling us you are in Melbourne. How do I fill a large container inexpensively so it doesn't get clogged up with the growing medium? Don't want to pay for fresh potting mix for 20 containers when you're maybe using half the container with soil that's, well, probably not really going to be too important as far as getting the plant off to the best result. I know exactly what you're trying to do here. Often you can either buy a bulk mix, so you can get what they call a tree planting mix or a soil improver mix. That sort of stuff is very good for filling in the base. Generally, it's an organic mixture and it's got good drainage, got good sand, etc. in it. But the top area, probably that you want at least that much of the pot's topsoil. You want it with a good potting mix, and it has to be a red tick. So keep your eye out for really good potting mixes. I think probably the one that I would recommend is this one over the back here. So you can see Performance Naturals. There's a soil improver there, so you can buy it in bags, or alternatively, you can get the Performance Naturals potting mix. It's absolutely fantastic for getting really good results from your indoor and outdoor plants in pots. Okay, make sure you give us a like. Make sure you tell me where you're from, what state and what suburb, and I will do my very best to help you out. We have got so many questions coming through. This is fantastic. Keep asking. It's absolutely wonderful to be able to answer your garden questions and help you out in your backyard. And this is the time of the year when we need the help the most. A little bit later on, I will give you a bit of a rundown on the top things you should be doing in your garden. But right now, let's go to Stirling, which is a suburb here in Perth. Christine, hello, Christine. I know you're such a great supporter of ours. Thank you so much. Will the lawn builder weed killer get rid of creeping oxalis? Now, there's a good something I want to qualify just quickly here, Christine. That is, this lawn builder weed killer is great for fine leaf grasses. And yes, it will get rid of creeping oxalis in a fine leaf lawn. If you've got a buffalo lawn, you need to get a specialised buffalo treatment, and there's a lawn builder hose on, and that will also take out the creeping oxalis. Creeping oxalis in buffalo, in most lawns, really shouldn't be there. It's a sign that your lawn's not getting enough sunlight. So this isn't a bad time of the year to get up and prune some of your trees back overhead if that's what's shading the lawn out or encouraging the creeping oxalis to come in and take over. You have said that you've applied weed and feed for buffalo twice and it's still not dying. One of the tricks that you do need to do is actually make sure that you apply it on a dry day. So you want at least, to be quite honest, at least 24 hours for that to dry over the top, and then it'll start to have the effect on the creeping oxalis. I hope that helps, Christine. Yeah. Patience is a virtue. Definitely don't do it in the morning. Don't do it in the late afternoon. Wait until any moisture on the lawn has dried, and then apply it over, and then make sure there's no rain coming through. It's always hard to predict, but just looking out the window, today might be a good day in Perth. Nicole, we're not sure where you're from. Again, let us know where you're from, folks. Is it okay to save dahlia seeds when they're more green than black? It's a good question, Nicole. I tend to think that you're better to actually let them turn that sort of brownish colour as they're heading towards black. Don't let them go completely black. Pick them, pop them into a paper bag, and take that and hang it, suspend it somewhere in your shed in a nice dry location, and let them dry out. You want a little bit of air movement moving through that bag ideally to help them dry out, but you don't want the seeds to fall out. Hopefully that answers your question. Pam, you are from Broken Hill in far western New South Wales. Can you suggest a lemon tree for me to grow in a half wine barrel? Is it a good time to plant now? Love your show, which has helped so much. Thanks so much, Pam, and it's wonderful to have you with us. As far as lemon trees go, there's some great lemons out there. My two favourite, probably, if you wanted something indestructible, Eureka is indestructible. It's the classic Aussie lemon. It is not the best juicing lemon, but it's a big lemon, can be used for all sorts of purposes. The two best, well, Maya has to be one that, well, I just love Maya lemon. And the other one is Lisbon. And the interesting thing is you can get them both grafted plants, grafted as dwarf lemons. Now, why is that important? Because if you're growing them in a half wine barrel, they're going to perform really well in that environment, and they'll still get to 1.5 meters by about 1.5 meters wide if you let them grow to their full shape. But they'll produce anywhere up to probably 60 to 70 lemons per season that they come in, and some of them will produce 2 crops a year if you're lucky. So Lisbon probably is my preferred. Maya is a great variety. Both produce great juice, great flesh. So if you want to grate the flesh and use it in cooking, that's also terrific. They're my two favourites. Keep your eye out for the dwarfs. I know that Garden Express did have dwarf citrus last year. I got a few for my garden, and they do stay really nice and compact, so ideal for a wine barrel. Hopefully that helps. Leah is in Brisbane, back up into Queensland. What would be the best time of the year to prune my olive tree? Well, probably not right at the moment, because your olive tree should have fruit on it at present. Mine do at home. In fact, one I pruned really hard last year hasn't produced any flowers or fruit this year, and there's a good lesson in that, is that when you do prune olives back hard, you end up in a situation where you'll affect the following year's crop. I do expect it'll produce a lot of fruit the following year, so don't go doing anything. I think probably now is not a bad time, to be quite honest. I'm not sure whether you're planting into the ground or planting into pots with olive trees, but if you were to do some planting, it's not a bad time of the year to be putting them into the ground as well. So pruning and planting olives, good time of the year. Christine's come back. Thanks, Trevor. You've done everything I've just said. The lawn doesn't get sun all day, but would only be shaded by the house shed and the shade house for about half the day. Look, it's usually that problem actually that encourages so Christine's brought up about the creeping oxalis. Creeping oxalis, it'll grow really well where it's kind of slightly shaded out. And as the sun gets lower in the sky in the north as it goes across, we do end up with a bit of a spread of it. So if you can take it out using the weed and feed or a selective weed killer and popping into your local store, and I know you've got a Waldex near you, Christine, that might be one worthwhile popping into and talking to them about one of their selective herbicides that'll take out broadleafs and oxalis. Okay. We've got lots of questions coming through. Please don't stop asking. Keep asking. We've still got a good 20 minutes at the moment for me to answer your questions. But what I wanted to do was to talk to you about the things you should be doing in your garden now to get the best results. And there's a couple of things. If you've got productive gardens, organic gardens that you're trying to grow vegetables and fruit and herbs in, now's the time to be getting organic matter in it. Whilst I said that planting into something like sheep manure, horse manure, cow manure, direct with a seedling, a bare-rooted seedling, is not a good idea. It is definitely a great idea to get them dug into the surface, the top 100, 150 mil of your topsoil of your vegetable garden. Dig in a lot of that material, and the productivity of your winter and also spring vegetable crops will blow your mind. They really do make such a big difference. If you were to ask me what my favourite manure is as far as organics go, I know Don Burke always used to tell me that horse was his favourite. I find with horse that there's too many weed seeds in horse. They don't process anywhere near as well as cow. And cow, because cows have 3 stomachs, they really do process it. The nutrients in cow manure always seems to be really good as well. And when you incorporate cow manure into particularly sandy soils, the productivity that comes out of that is fantastic. So now's the time to do that. Number one was to make sure that you're adding that organic matter into your productive soils. Number two, cultivating soils, whether it be a vegetable garden or whether it be general garden beds, getting in and cultivating your soils right now. If you're in a general garden bed, even if it is a native planting garden bed, cultivate your soil because you're turning weed seeds over and germinating weeds. So cultivate them back in. They put nutrient and goodness back into the soil. Don't leave you with a lot of weeding. And in ornamental beds, I would add a mulch. But in vegetable gardens, I'd be looking at just planting straight into that if your soil's nice and healthy. For people like Christine Rankin, who's raised this issue with regards to the oxalis or any of the broadleaf weeds that are in soils, in lawns, when you treat it, those weeds will die, and there's going to be like little patches left in your lawn. If you go and oversow now with a lawn seed, soon after you've actually sprayed those weeds out, all those patches will fill up, and come summertime, all your existing lawn will grow back into those patches, but you'll never end up with a situation where your lawn looks patchy or dead. And that's why sowing lawn seed now is usually the best right through until about October. After October, it's pretty much pointless because we get such hot, dry runs of weather that generally lawn seed struggles to establish without lots of water being put on it. And I don't want to see you putting too much water on your garden. We don't have it to waste here in Australia. When it comes to colour, so my number 4 thing, there we go, number 4 thing, colour. Right now is the time to be planting Primulas, pansies, violas, cinerarias. They all look fantastic, but you've got to put them in now. They love the cold conditions. In fact, violets, violas and pansies, because we've got really short days up until the 21st of June, the flowers will just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So now's the time to get them in, and you'll end up with the biggest possible flowers. When it comes to pests, probably the single biggest pest out there is going to be snails and slugs, and particularly on your new bulbs. So those bulbs you got from Garden Express, put them into the garden bed and they're all coming up. They're starting to produce either buds or flowers. They are going to be munched on massively by slugs and snails. So control can be one of a number of different ways of doing it, but getting some bait stations down or getting some snail pellets out is vitally important if you want to protect those flowers. Pruning, So citrus, we've talked about citrus last week. As your citrus trees finish fruiting and you've harvested the full crop, giving them a light prune, getting them into shape. I know I'll be doing that with my mandarin this year. And then adding a fertilizer, really, really important. This will help the tree really grow through those cooler months. Caterpillars are another pest that you want to keep your eye out for. Definitely starting to do some damage. And I noticed that I've got some mint at home. So I'll be putting some caterpillar controls in place. I'll probably initially just use something quite light, like a chili garlic spray. And if I'm not on top of it within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to hit it with something a little bit heavier. And the last thing is protecting your plants from cold. Now, we talked with David about those polytunnels and those white cloth tunnels. They're fantastic ways to protect young seedlings in your veggie garden, or, if you're growing flowers along garden beds at the front. Protect them now, and the plants will continue to grow but be protected from the cold. They'll be actually heated by the solar energy that comes out, so they'll grow a bit better. Most important thing is, if you can't get those tunnels over the top, get some sea salt. Now, sea salt is a really interesting product. It's a seaweed extract. It comes from that bull kelp that comes from King Island, and it has some natural property in there that people like orchardists and farmers use to spray over the foliage, and it stops the crystallization of the freezing process of water, reduces it, so that the damage that's done to any foliage is reduced dramatically. So applying now, even a week before a frost comes through, will do the world of good. And you just apply it, literally spray it over the foliage. So the hose-on sea salt is a great way to go. I sure talk a lot, don't I? Okay, we're starting to head into the home run. We've got about 12 minutes to go. Nicole would like to know what kind of ferns are frost tolerant to plant outside near Canberra. Now, there are certainly the terrace ferns are really quite good with some frosty conditions, but as a general comment, ferns tend to grow under the protection of other plants. There's very few that can stand out in exposed open environments. One that you would look out for is Dicksonia antarctica. Its name really gives it away. It's known as the Man Fern. It's a beautiful fern that grows very, very well right up into Sydney, really, to be quite honest. And certainly down when you get into the cooler climates of Victoria. And obviously Tassie, you will find these growing everywhere. You often buy them by the stump, so the trunk itself, wherever there's clearance being done in Tassie, or alternatively Victoria. Under license, they can be removed, and those stumps can be planted straight into the ground. So it's a really good way to go. Melissa, you're in Canberra. So you've joined here late. That's all right. Don't worry. Can I move my dwarf citrus trees during winter? Absolutely. Winter is a really good time to be transplanting citrus. 2 bits of advice. One is, obviously, don't do it whilst they've got fruit on. Otherwise, they'll drop the fruit. 2, when you do it, take as much of the root system out. And 3 is when you put them into their new home, put them into some good soil and soak the root system and the soil around the outside with sea salt, because it reduces transplant shock. Catherine is in Success in WA. It's sort of south of Perth. Great location, sandy soils. Is it too late to prune back my lime and lemon trees? They're still covered in fruit. When should I feed them after the prune? Well, I think my previous bit of advice was, get your fruit through. You're going to find limes and lemons are delivering fruit over the next 6 weeks in WA predominantly. And once you've harvested them all, give your trees a prune. Then give them a feed after you've given them a prune. Denise is in the Hunter Valley in New South Wales. What can I do to improve my clay soil so I can plant native shrubs? So 2 tricks. One, that mounding effect that I talked about with a good free draining soil. Put that on top of heavy soils, plant into the mound, and your natives will get off to a pretty good start. You can try and break clay soils up by adding something like gypsum into the soil. Really good way to go. Gypsum is a great, what they call, clay breaker, and it tends to cause it to crumble. So you can do it one of 2 ways. You can try mixing over the top and breaking up that clay and getting into the surface, or you can go around and you can bang holes in, or you can core the area and then put gypsum in on top. If you're wondering how much, anywhere between 500 and 1 kilo of gypsum per square metre. Sounds like a lot, but once you get it into the topsoil, it kind of starts crumbling it all up and improves aeration and improves the results. And native plants need that. And one other tip, Denise, is that talk to your local garden centre about native plants that come from heavy clay soils. There are some varieties that perform so much better. Timmy, I'm not sure where you're from. Oh, no, I do know where you're from. You've said it in your message. Can I grow lychees and persimmons in Sydney? I'm situated in the south. Well, I have a good mate who has a fantastic restaurant over there, Sujit, and his little farm that he has down south of Sydney has both of those in there. Lychees will definitely grow in Sydney. Persimmons will grow there. Persimmons are great trees. If you've been looking at some of the colour trees out in the autumn, persimmons are one of the best colour trees you can get, and they produce obviously a great fruit known as kaki fruit in Japan. Become more and more popular here. There's two types, astringent and non-astringent. And the non-astringent types are the ones that are not furry, the crunchy ones. So Fuyu is one of those varieties I would grow really well in Sydney. Lychees will produce fruit, and you probably want 2 trees, Timmy. I hope that helps. Sandra is in the Central Coast, New South Wales. Great to have you join us, and great to have so many people from New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland tuning in today. Wow, we have really pumped through these questions. Sandra's question is, what's the best way to look after peace lilies? Now, peace lilies are spathiphyllums. They are generally an indoor plant. You could almost get away with growing them as an under canopy plant, depending on the type of variety. So some of those bigger, broader leaf forms would do really well in that environment, Sandra. But the trick is that they do love a shady, protected position. They don't like extreme cold, and they love good soil. So if you can provide good soil, if they're grown in pots, for example, really good potting mix, red tick, keep your eye out for that Osmocote premium potting mix, always does the job. Feeding them using a liquid fertilizer. Now, I'll give you an example. You can't go wrong with something like this. This is the pour and feed. Now, there is one for indoor plants. This one's for cacti and succulents, so there's a lot of different formulations. But the one for indoor plants, literally all you're doing is you're literally screwing the cap off, pouring into the cap, and pouring the cap into the soil around the base of the plant, and around the outside edge of the pot, ideally. It's the easiest way to do it. You can almost do that once a week with things like spathiphyllum, and it'll stimulate flowering, it'll stimulate great growth, and you end up with the best of both worlds. How is that? We have gone through a lot of questions today. I hope you've enjoyed our live feed. It's great to be back and spending time with you, and I really appreciate your support. The team here, Michaela and Stephen, done a great job pulling it all together. I'd like to thank them. Michaela will reach out today's winners of our Mr. Fothergill seeds. What else do I need to tell you? You can actually tune back into this and watch it at any point in time. You can always catch up on previous stories also from the Garden Gurus on our website. We've got the YouTube channel where you can catch episodes. Of course, 9 Now still has a number of our episodes playing, so you can check it out there. The Garden Gurus .tv, our webpage, is also a great resource as well for gardening information. And I hope that you caught our episode of Explore TV last weekend. We went to Norfolk Island, and the good news is we're back this coming weekend. It's 2:30 across New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland, and 4:30 across pretty much every other capital city around Australia. And look, it's a really wonderful program. Norfolk Island was just beautiful. If you're not sure where it's playing on Channel 9 in your local area, check out your local guides. This week, I do apologise for my very unique sense of dad humour that regularly pops up through this particular episode. It's a lot of fun, and it's a beautiful part of the world, so make sure you check it out. Remember, you can listen back to today's live stream, and you can catch up on previous episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast and Audible. And Sue McDougall is joining us next week. I'm off at a conference actually, learning hopefully a lot of new things. So Sue's back in the chair next week. She'll see you Monday, 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Of course, that's 10 a.m. Western Standard Time. And for the rest of you, check out your local area. Happy gardening, everybody. Please stay safe, everybody in Victoria. And for all of you that are about to get chilled down, try and stay warm. I'm Trevor Cochrane. I look forward to seeing you again really soon. Bye.
Visit the Garden Guru's online store and browse through a collection of high-quality, German-made Wolfgarten tools. You'll also find a range of books with information to help create and maintain a beautiful garden. You can also access the online store on the Garden Guru's Facebook page.